Hello everybody. Today's project is we're going to replace on this 1994 Ford F150, otherwise known as the OBS, old body style. We're going to replace the gauge cluster and add a gauge cluster that has a tachometer. And the reason we're doing that is because I believe that adding a tachometer to a vehicle adds value to the vehicle because it gives you more information about what your engine is doing, and it's all towards one simple goal of turning your car that you care about, that you love, into a good drive. So the first thing that you want to do when you're turning your car into a good drive, especially this 1994 Ford F150 with a 5.0 liter, is we want to make sure that the speedometer is going to be properly calibrated. And the way that you want to do this is you're going to hold down this reset button and then turn the key 2 clicks over without starting it to get the calibration of your tire. So here's how you do it. You're going to hold this down, turn the key. It's a little bit harder to do than expected with one hand. All right, let's try it again. Hold this down, turn the key, and you see that the speedometer is doing its calibration. And this number 6 here tells you that there are 6 more opportunities for you to calibrate your speedometer to your tire size. And to see the current calibration, it's 972 is the current setting. And so I have no reason to believe that my speedometer has been off. I've driven many times, never felt my speedometer was off, compared it to Waze or other apps that you may use to make sure that your calibration is correct. And so I plan on keeping my speedometer unit, so that's not going to be an issue for me. However, if you choose not to keep the speedometer unit and in fact use the one that came with your new gauge cluster, then you want to make sure that you're calibrated correctly for 2 reasons. One, you want to make sure that you're reading the right speed, so that way you're not going too slow or too fast with the flow of traffic or getting pulled over for whatever reason. And second, it's because you want to make sure that your transmission, which is reading the shift points based on your speed, that your transmission will continue to shift properly. So let's get to it. Let's replace it. First thing I'm going to show you now is how to remove the cover that is covering this gauge cluster. Okay, so for today's project, I had to use a small screwdriver, a 1/4 inch bit, 732, a 1/4 inch drive with the extension, and then a T20 and a T10, although I don't know if it exists, a T11 probably would have fit better. But that's it. These are all the parts that you need. No fancy unboxing here, just simply showing it to you beforehand. You can see there's a little bit of dirt, so I'm going to take this plastic cover off, clean it off before I'm done. If you look inside here, there are 2 bulbs, 1, 2, there's a 3rd one missing. So I'm going to replace some of these bulbs and of course test them all out before I'm done with the installation. So the first step is removing this panel piece as well as that panel piece over there. So you can try to pry these out with a butter knife, don't recommend that, or with one of these, which is like a putty knife. Again, it's because it gives it a little bit more give, I don't recommend that. The best thing to do is really just to get yourself one of these plastic pieces that has give, as well as has the ability to get in there. And there are 2 clips on each corner. So you just want to gently pry it out. That's too funny. There we go. That's one. There's the other. And to expose this one screw, do the same thing on the other side. So the next thing you need to take out after removing those screws is basically the headlight switch. And you see that little slot right there on the top? All you have to do is put a screwdriver right inside of it, push down on it, and then pull it out. So it's very difficult to do with one hand. I will show you the mechanism in just a second. So here's the mechanism inside. So you see all you have to do is just lift it up almost, and it'll slide right off of this part. Very easy. Okay, so I ended up disconnecting the fuel switch. It only has this one tab on the side. It was really easy to disconnect after popping the cover off. You can see here that there are some areas where the face of the cover will essentially plant itself in. There are literally only 2 screws holding it in place. The rest are just tabs, okay? And let me bring it over here. There's the other screw. And I ended up just disconnecting my 4x4 switch by just undoing the screws, because this piece of plastic was on so tight. An old friend of mine told me a saying once, which is never fight with plastic because nobody wins. Meaning, if you fight with plastic and it breaks, you lose. And if you fight with plastic, it's just nobody wins. So next, we are going to take this instrument cluster out, and to do that, I still have to disconnect this cable over here. Let's see if we can get a good image of it. Okay, that's your shift indicator. It basically tells you if you're in park or if you're in drive, reverse, and so on. And I will take this cluster out, and let's go ahead and do that. And by the way, you do need to put the key in the ignition, turn it so that you can get this out of your way to get the cover off, as well as to take the cluster out. Let's do it. So I went ahead and removed not just the top portion, but also the bottom portion in order to gain better access to the shifter cable. Okay, so here we are side by side. The instrument cluster is out. Let's go ahead and replace some components. So just in case you were wondering, when you take off the old gauge for the gas and voltage, you'll notice that the pattern does not match. In case you were wondering, they are different. All right, I am so excited, you guys. In just a few minutes, I am going to be installing the new gauge with my old speedometer that's already been pre-programmed, and the tachometer. I just cannot wait. Here we go. Now that this is ready and assembled, before I put it back in, I am going to replace any bulbs that are burnt out. So for instance, you see that this bulb here is missing. So I'm gonna cannibalize this part here, since I don't want to go to the store and buy any bulbs. And they're very simple to take out. You just simply twist it, inspect it, make sure that it's not burnt out, and this one is good. And so, sorry you couldn't see it. And I'm gonna go ahead and put it in right here and twist it in place. There we go. So I will check each and every one of these bulbs and replace if necessary. So here's an example of a burnt out bulb. Let's see if we can get it. Yeah, there we go. So it's clearly burnt out, and that came out of the speedometer. That would have been a serious bummer if I had not replaced it prior to installing it back in. Let's keep checking. Okay, so they're all checked out. Now, some people, like Chris Fix, for instance, who I admire, would take the time to sincerely clean the inside of the truck and behind the truck where it's dusty. I'm not going to worry too much about that. So long as it works, I'll be satisfied. I did clean the screen, and that's really what matters to me, is that I'll be able to see. Okay, so here we go, the moment of truth. I installed the gauge cluster in. Let's go ahead and turn it on and see what happens. We have a reading, ladies and gentlemen. Amazing. And let's see all the other gauges, if they will work or not. Now I'm going to switch between fuel tanks. It is working. It's a lot slower than my other gauge cluster. The fuel gauge would move much quicker than that, but it moved. And now really the only thing to see is if the temperature gauge will work, but that I'm gonna take it for a spin to see if that worked or not. Now I'm gonna just finish putting it all back together and take it for a spin. I'm so excited. This is amazing. Okay, so a few things I wanna share with you. First is make sure to put the screws in. There's 4 that hold the instrument cluster inside before you start putting things together. Not saying I did, not saying I didn't. And then another pro tip, the truck will start but will not stay on if this is not connected, which makes sense. It doesn't know where to get the fuel from. And then finally, I want to show you how to install this. It literally just goes back inside, just like that. And now it's working. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the rear panel back on. That's where the fuse box is and so forth. 2 screws. Actually, they're below, the screws down there. I was just pointing to where the clips fit. And we will take it on the road. Cannot wait. So one thing you wanted to do beforehand is look at your oil pressure and your gauges and just try to figure out where were they before you made the changes, okay? Meaning my oil pressure right now is reading on this gauge slightly over the R, between the R and the M. And that's actually kind of where it was before. Same with the voltage is also in the M, kind of where it was before. So now let's go ahead and see the temperature gauge is going up like it's supposed to. And let's look at the tachometer in action. Oh, it's so great. I know you guys can't see it just yet, but just look at that. I can see exactly what's happening in my engine. I know exactly when my truck is warmed up, and we'll talk about that in another video about the importance of warming up your vehicle. Just a little bit of background, I've had this truck for almost 4 years now, since 2017. This thing, I paid $1,200 for it, and it came with about 170,000 miles. I've put on it almost 17,000 in 4 years. It's been an amazing, amazing work truck for me. And I'm not using it for work. What I mean is go to Home Depot, go camping, things like that. And I will absolutely talk about all the repairs that I've had to do since I've had it. But what I've decided to do in the last, which is why you're watching this video, is I've decided I'm gonna go ahead and share with you my experiences as I repair my vehicles, and I'm happy to share all that information with you in the near future. And just the entire goal and the entire purpose is to turn my car into a good drive. And so that when the day comes, if it ever comes, that I have to pass this car on to someone else, they will know exactly what was done to the car, exactly the maintenance, vehicle history, since I've owned it at least. The AC will work, the transmission will shift, there won't be any leaks. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what I refer to as a good drive. And this Ford F150, aka the Beast, is on its way, if not already, a good drive. See you in the next video. Okay, so here's a video at nighttime, and even though some of the gauges look a little dim, they're actually super bright. So bulbs are good, don't need to take this back apart, all is well.